activity. And we have the strategy. Strategy, remember what the meaning is? Strategy means a way of learning, a method. So our strategy here is recalling review material. You know that sometimes a lecture begins with a review of the previous class or a textbook reading, and this is a good chance for you to recall what you studied. And if the lecture asks you about the previous material, use your mental notes or your written notes. Either look in your notebook for your written notes or your mental notes. That means what you kept in your brain, in your memory. Use those notes to recall the important information. And then, besides recalling it, what do you need to do after that? You need to say it. You need to say it. Give an oral response. If you give an oral response, when you say it aloud, this is good because saying something aloud can reinforce your memory and understanding of the material. When you hear it, you say it, you speak it, all of those things help reinforce it. Okay, reinforce. That means to make something stronger, right? So if you look at the footnote about reinforce, to add strength to something to make it stronger. So you can reinforce. Now, oftentimes I ask you to do the activity called retelling, right? Why do I ask you to do that? Because you can look at your notes, you can recall from your memory what the lecturer says, and you say it aloud to your friends. And that way you build more information. It helps you understand the concept better. Not just listen to the lecture once, but review it. So that way it helps you recall the material, right? Yes. Is that what happens? Yes? Okay, that's a good thing. Now in activity 10, learning what sleep is, we have a passage that asks you to choose one of the two words in order to make the sentences correct. So for example, do we want to say sleep is a basic biological, or do we want to say sleep is a basic economical state? Which one is correct to make this sentence right? Biological, right. So maybe you can just tell me what the sentence is. Sleep is a basic biological state of rest for the mind and body. Remember that. Sleep is for the mind and the body. Both the mind and the body. Okay, look at the next one. What do we say? During sleep, the eyes usually close. Right, they usually close. The sleeping person becomes less conscious. Right, okay. And the body decreases in movement. Right, and responds more or less. More or less. Right, the body responds less to the environment. Yeah. Sleep is controlled by the biological clock in the brain. Good, you're doing well. This brain process has a 24-hour cycle. A 24-hour cycle. Its most important function is to control the daily cycle of sleep. That's a noun. Don't use the adjective sleep, use a noun sleep. So it controls the cycle of sleep and wakefulness. The biological clock provides an internal wake-up signal to the rest of the brain. And ordinarily, this very powerful alerting signal occurs during the daytime hours. Yes, this alerting signal keeps us drowsy or awake. Awake, right. All right. So are you falling asleep right now? No, because your biological clock is telling you you should stay awake right now. Your biological clock is helping you. Have you ever felt jet lag when you travel from one time zone to another? Anybody experience jet lag? You know jet lag? When you travel from one time zone to another. For example, my husband and my mother-in-law went to China for a month. Then they came back to California. And then the time is different. So their clock was upset, right? So first when they went away, many hours different, they had to adjust to the local time. Then they come back and they have to readjust to the local time here. And their biological clock is changing. And now it takes a few days, or if you're older, it takes longer time, right? Young people, it doesn't take so much time. But some people, it takes 3 or 4 days. How about you? 3 or 4 days? Yeah, right. Because your biological clock's, hey, you were over here at noon. Now you're over here. It's not noon anymore. It's not midnight. So it takes time for your biological clock. But your biological clock will get in tune and you'll get over what we call jet lag. And then it will remind you, okay, it's time to stay awake. Okay, time to fall asleep. So for example, my mother-in-law, she's very regular in her sleep. I admire her. She's the best sleeper I know. When she puts her head on the pillow, I admire her. Many people admire her because some people feel like they wake up a lot or they can't fall asleep. But she's a good sleeper. She has a very good clock. Her biological clock works very well. Tells her at what time, maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, something like that, she's out. And then she's up very early in the morning. She gets up and does her exercises. She goes out to the park and she does her Tai Chi. And then she does her Tai Chi and does her exercises. And then she has some water. And then she goes out in the garden and she picks all the weeds out and she waters the plants. And she does all those things. Good health, right? Yeah. Okay. So your biological clock helps you keep regular. Let's go on to the rest. Let's look at the last paragraph. The last paragraph talks about the total amount of sleep that people need changes throughout the life cycle. Infants and children sleep between 16 and 20 hours per day. They sleep a lot. Okay? But adults sleep between 7 and 8 hours. How about teenagers and adults? Which ones? People over 60, are they called teenagers or not? No. Adults over 60 years of age. What are teenagers? They're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Those are teenagers. So we're not talking about those people. They cannot be over 60. So adults over 60 years of age, or we can also pronounce adults. Two pronunciations. We can say adults or we can say adults. Both are correct. Adults over 60 years of age sleep about 6.5 hours. 6.5 hours. Did you know that? You're not that old yet. But maybe as you grow older, you won't need quite so much sleep. Many people deprive their bodies of necessary sleep. Oh. And what happens? What does this create? This creates a sleep debt. Don't put your lips together for B. Remember the B is silent. Debt. Sleep debt. Okay, put your lips together for P. Watch my lips together. Look at your lips in your mirror and say sleep debt. Sleep debt. Right. So if you deprive your body of sleep, then you have a sleep debt. How many of you have a sleep debt? Raise your hand if you have a sleep debt. That means you don't sleep enough. You don't sleep enough? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you don't sleep enough. Okay, so some of you are raising your hand. That means you have a sleep debt. All right? A lot of people have a sleep debt. This is a common problem, but maybe we will learn more about it and we'll find some good advice for us to follow.